ABC 7, your Suncoast News. We're here for you.
100 years ago today, the unsinkable super ship, the Titanic, met its tragic end during its maiden voyage. Though it set off from England and sank off the coast of Newfoundland, it has connections to the Suncoast. Mike Robinson of Inglewood was, in 1987, the first investor with RMS Titanic Incorporated, the first and only company with legal permission to recover artifacts from the wreckage. Robinson says the company raised almost 800 items during its first trip to the site. And while the recovery sparked controversy, should anyone disturb the gravesite of more than 1,500 people, Robinson says they have preserved the history of the ship.
We brought up King Tut out of a tomb. We carried his tomb around forever and showed it to everybody. What's the difference?
Robinson also says teams recovered a lot of jewelry, some of which they were able to identify and return to heirs of its original owners. One Suncoast couple feels a kinship with the ship. John and Kitty Brophy live in Northport. Kitty's interest in the Titanic goes back about as far as she can remember because her grandmother was a passenger on the fateful voyage.
Mention the Titanic, and most of us remember the 1990s blockbuster film.
Right here
Kitty Brophy remembers something else.
is where my grandmother can be seen walking on the deck.
Seen walking on the deck in this photo aboard the Titanic. Ada Doling was one of the more than 2,200 people who set sail on the Titanic's only voyage in April 1912.
She was visiting her mother in New York City, who had emigrated several years before.
There was a sister ship built before the Titanic, and of course the Olympic never got the notoriety the Titanic did. It had the good sense to stay afloat.
Now, a century later, Kitty and her husband John have a collection of keepsakes related to history's most famous shipwreck, including a bound volume John compiled with passenger records and photos, including Kitty's grandmother's.
Well, I felt it was something that should be recorded. It should be preserved, you know, for the family. Put a little biography of Captain Smith.
They have become amateur historians of the voyage that ended in the icy North Atlantic, the unsinkable ship ripped open by an iceberg after ignoring warnings about the possible danger from its then state-of-the-art wireless telegraph system.
He was so busy sending private messages from the well-to-do on board that he did tell one ship, "Shut up, I'm too busy."
My father claims that his mother's hair turned white very rapidly after that incident.
Ada Doling survived, one of the 710 saved by lifeboats, sitting in the frigid ocean, watching more than 1,500 others go down with the ship.
I just can't imagine the trauma that they must have, experienced.
Kitty's grandmother went back to England.
This is my grandmother and grandfather.
Kitty's father emigrated to the U.S. in 1920, and Ada came to visit them in Connecticut in 1939.
Being 10 years old, I didn't know enough to ask questions.
Ada died at age 85 in April 1962, 50 years to the month of the Titanic disaster. And 50 years later, her granddaughter thinks of it differently than most of us.
How many people do you know that have a connection to history like that?
I feel like a celebrity, but I'm not.
The Titanic tragedy did not scare Kitty away from ocean liners. She and John like to go on cruises. And in that piece, we saw brief clips of the James Cameron film Titanic. Its re-release to coincide with the anniversary pushed the film's total worldwide box office take to more than $2 billion. Wow. So again, the fascination with that ship continues a century after it went down.